Somebody wants one machine that eats a small city's worth of power, up and running in 18 months.
Not one of them, over 50. Asking a single utility for 3 times its entire grid.
It got so crowded the utility did the unthinkable. It stopped saying yes. And none of it says data center on your bill. So let's go find where it hides.
I got a notice that my electricity is going up again, and everybody keeps telling me the same thing. It's the data centers. So I pulled up my bill to find the data center charge. There isn't one. So how exactly does the AI boom end up on my bill?
That's the right question. And the honest answer is that it depends entirely on one decision almost nobody ever sees. Here in central Ohio, the average home pays about 17 cents a kilowatt hour, a little below the national average. And somewhere on that bill is a small line for transmission, the cost of moving power across the big high-voltage wires. Right now, more than 50 companies have asked one utility to plug in over 30,000 megawatts of new data centers. Building the wires for that costs billions. And the only real question that decides your bill is whether that cost goes on their line or on yours. So today, no outrage, just the mechanism. By the end of this, you'll know the exact rule that decides who pays for the AI boom. It's called cost allocation. And I'm going to show you the real filing where an Ohio regulator drew that line, down to the percentage. It is quietly the number that decides whether your bill funds a data center, and almost nobody has read it. Start with what the last 2 meter episodes built. Your bill pays for a giant pile of approved infrastructure, the rate base, times a return the regulator allows. That's how the utility earns. But there's a second question hiding underneath it, and it's the whole story today. Once the utility spends the money, who in the customer pool actually pays it back?
Isn't it just everybody, split up by how much power you use?
Roughly, and that's exactly where it gets interesting. The process is called cost allocation. Every customer gets sorted into a class: residential, commercial, industrial. And the utility's costs get divided among those classes by a principal regulators call cost causation. The plain version, whoever causes a cost should pay for it. Regulators even run a whole formal study, a class cost of service study, just to draw those dividing lines. For a century that worked fine, because customers looked more or less alike. A data center does not look like anything the system was built for.
Because they're huge.
Huge, concentrated, and fast. A single large data center can want as much power as a small city, and it wants it in about 18 months, not 18 years. So the utility has to build ahead of it, new lines, new substations, sometimes a whole new stretch of the highest voltage backbone. That's billions of dollars committed before the data center runs a single server.
And if the data center doesn't show up?
Then you have what the industry calls a stranded cost. Billions of dollars of steel in the ground, serving nobody, and here's the part that lands on you. Under normal cost allocation, a stranded cost doesn't just vanish. It gets spread across all the classes, which means the residential class, which means your bill. Every ratepayer quietly cosigns a loan they never agreed to. That is the default. That is what happens if nobody changes the rule. So let's look at the scale of this, because it is genuinely hard to believe. This is Central Ohio, served by American Electric Power's Ohio utility, about 1.5 million customers. By the utility's own sworn testimony, data center load there went from around 100 megawatts in 2020 to about 600 megawatts by 2024.
So 6 times bigger in just 4 years. And that's the part that already happened, before anyone even started panicking about AI.
That's the part that already happened. Now the requests. The same utility told regulators it had received interest for more than 30,000 megawatts of new data center load. Over 50 customers. More than 90 separate sites. In fact, the load ran so far ahead of the wires that in March of 2023, the utility did something almost unheard of. It stopped signing up new data centers in the Columbus area altogether. A moratorium. It simply could not connect them fast enough without straining the grid everyone else is already sitting on. And lifting that freeze, safely, is a big part of what this whole docket is for.
30,000? How big is the whole system right now?
That's the number that stops you cold. This utility's entire peak demand, every home, every store, every factory it serves, runs somewhere around 8 to 10,000 megawatts. So companies ask to plug in roughly 3 times the entire system on top of the system.
That can't physically fit. There is no way the grid just has 3 extra systems lying around waiting.
Not without rebuilding the backbone, by the utility's own testimony. Serving that load would mean expanding its 765 kilovolt transmission network, the biggest wires on the grid. Their estimate, billions of dollars and 7 to 10 years to build. And now the trap comes into focus. Some of those 30,000 megawatts are real. Some are one company holding a place in line at 5 different sites. For one project it will actually build. If the utility builds for all of it and half of it evaporates, that is the stranded cost. And remember where the default sends it. One more thing. So this stays honest. The utility is not the villain here. Every mile of that new backbone that does get built and actually used becomes rate base and earns it a return, the exact machine from our last episode. So there is a real pull to build. Which is precisely why the question of who funds it has to be answered on paper, in advance, by the regulator. And in Ohio, it just was.
Okay, show me the paper.
Ohio regulators, case number 24-508, ELATA, a settlement filed in October 2024, approved by the Commission on July 9, 2025. It creates a special tariff, a separate rate class, just for large data centers, and it is very specific. Who it covers: any new data center over 25 megawatts, and separately, mobile data centers, the crypto miners, over 1 megawatt. If you are that big, you don't get the ordinary deal anymore. You get this one.
And what's this one?
The core of it is a single number, 85%. A data center on this tariff has to pay, every month, for at least 85% of the power it reserved, whether it actually uses that power or not, for up to 12 years. Reserve 500 megawatts, and you pay for at least 425 every month, for more than a decade.
Even if the building is sitting half empty, or the project got canceled, and it's just a slab of concrete in a field.
Even if it's empty, that is the entire point. The 12 years break into a 4-year ramp, 50% the first year, then 65, then 80, then 90, and then an 85% floor for the 8 years after that. Want out early? There's an exit fee of about 3 years of those minimum charges. And before you connect it all, you have to prove you can actually pay real financial commitment, collateral. Now compare that to an ordinary big industrial customer whose minimum runs around 60%. The data center minimum is 85. That gap, 60 to 85, is the cost allocation decision, written down as a number.
So the data center is on the hook for its own wires, not me.
That is the design, and here is the regulator saying it in its own words. The settlement, quote, safeguards other non-data center customers from cost-shifting risks of underused investments made to serve Ohio's growing data center industry. Cost shifting. Underused investments. That is stranded cost, and they are pointing it away from your class on purpose.
Did the utility just volunteer all of that out of the goodness of its heart?
It's a negotiation, and the paper shows the negotiation. The utility first asked for 90% and 95% for the crypto miners over 10 years. It landed at 85%, stretched out to 12 years with the ramp. And notice what that structure actually does. A company that genuinely needs the power will sign a 12-year, 85% minimum without blinking. A company that was only holding a place in line, hoping to flip it later, will walk away. The tariff is a filter as much as it is a price.
And who actually signed the deal?
The utility, the commission's own staff, the state's official consumer advocate, a coalition of big industrial users, and Walmart. Walmart is a giant customer too, and it does not want to subsidize data centers any more than you do. When the people fighting over your bill include the consumer advocate and Walmart on the same side of the table, you are watching a cost allocation fight out in the open. For once, the whole system is visible. So step back and see the whole shape. 2 episodes ago, we took apart the rate base, what goes into the pile. Last time, the return on it. Today is the other half of the same machine. Once the money is spent, a rule decides whose name goes on which line. That rule is cost allocation, and it is quietly one of the most powerful numbers in your life. And here's the proof of how powerful it is. After this tariff went into effect, and the data centers suddenly had to put real money behind their requests, that speculative queue, the 30,000 megawatts, reportedly collapsed toward 13,000 almost. Overnight. Same demand, different rule. That gap, 17,000 megawatts of it, was never firm load in the first place. It was optionality, and the new rule made optionality expensive. The phantom projects filtered themselves out the moment somebody actually had to sign an 85% minimum for 12 years.
So the rule didn't lower anybody's bill, it decided whose bill it is.
That is exactly it. They did not cap a price. They redrew the class line, and that is the thing to carry out of here. When a brand new kind of customer shows up, the real fight is almost never about the price of power. It's about which class the wires get billed to. Follow that one decision, and you are following your own money. And this is not just Ohio. Virginia, where the largest data center cluster on Earth already sits, is fighting over its own large load class at the state commission. Georgia, Texas. Every state with a data center rush is running some version of this exact fight right now. Different utility, different percentage. Same question: which class pays for the build? And every one of them has a docket number you can go read. We just read Ohio's.
I'm still not seeing a data center charge on my bill, though.
And now you know why. When the rule works, you don't see it. That's the whole idea. The cost stays on the class that caused it. The line you never notice is the one doing the work. So next time your rate ticks up and somebody tells you it's the data centers, you'll know where to actually look. Not at a headline, at a docket number, and 1% buried inside it. That number decides whose name goes on the wires. Learn to find it, and you're never just guessing about your own bill again. I'm Marcus Reeve. 30 years reading the fine print.
And I'm Nora Vance. Go find the transmission line on your own bill. Now you know what it's really deciding.